Okay, thank you all for coming this afternoon for our great, great conversation today with Nancy Zak, getting 2 for 1. The Nancy Zak is a Newark resident who has been working for Ironbound Community Corporation as a community organizer for over 40 years. She has been involved with a variety of citywide issues, including affordable housing, tenant rights, helping to fund the HUD Tenants Coalition, city budget issues, the right to speak, preserving the library, planning and zoning, and environmental issues. She was a member of the first class of Rutgers Gus Henningberg Fellows, sponsored by the Institute of Ethnicity and Culture. Over the years, Nancy has received many awards, including the Newark Fire Department Community Service Award, the Wyona Lipton Award, the City of Newark, the Challenge of Caring Award from the East Ward Councilman, and an Empower 15 Award, which is Newark's most influential grassroots leaders award, the EPA Environmental Quality Award, and the Newark Public Schools Excellence Award for participating with the community. And she was elected by the parents to get that award. On the neighborhood level for ICC, Nancy has been active in toxic waste cleanups, getting new schools built, neighborhood planning, and many other quality of life issues for and with the Ironbound residents. She helped publish a trilingual neighborhood newspaper, the Ironbound Voices, for over 20 years. Two of her proud accomplishments is coordinating a successful park preservation effort for Riverbank Park, the 100-year-old Olmsted Park, which we'll learn more about, which was threatened with demolition for a baseball field. And this went through a volunteer community group called Spark, which means save the park at Riverbank Park, and helping to shepherd the new Riverfront Park to completion from 2012 to 2013. Nancy lives in Newark with her husband, Arnold, and her daughter, Beth. A few things that I'd like to say about Nancy is that Nancy has been, when I came into the work for the Trust for Public Land, I was met by Nancy and the team at ICC, and I was charged with creating friends groups around the parks. And so Nancy had already had the group of Sparks. And so we wanted to know her, amongst other people, how did you do it? What should we do? And what was most important? And Nancy didn't hold, well, I don't know how I'm going to tell her. It takes a lot of work, and you got to listen to the people in the community. You got to be shoulder to shoulder and doing the work. You can't dictate, and you have to listen and be consistent. And so through my travels, I listened, and we had, I want to say, bi-weekly meetings with Nancy and the team from ICC and Sister Carol about Riverfront Park. And it was a whole bunch of, it was trees that was halfway in the water, and you could barely walk. It was a lot of gravel. But we met not just in the office, we had to go on site on this sort of debris so that we could really see what I want to say the folk in the Ironbound was really rallying about and wanted to make sure that the whole city, all wards, was going to be a part of the project. It wasn't like it's just the ICC. It was really important that the outreach went to all 5 wards. And so the dedication and the preservation and the foundation of inclusiveness is what I got from Nancy during my journey with the Trust for Public Land. So Nancy, thank you so much for all you've done before me, during the time with me, and for those that's coming behind. Nancy Zak, 2 for 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. So the story of Riverbank Park and Riverfront Park, the 2-for-1s, is a story of a community as a whole, not one person, but everybody together being able to accomplish so something. And we heard about in 1996, we learned about a proposal, and we learned from our former director, Vic DeLuca, had left Ironbound and moved to Maplewood, where he became a counselor. He was elected there. And he saw in the tiny little legal notices in the suburban paper, not in the Star Ledger this time. But that's why it's important to read those things. He saw and he called up and said, they're thinking of taking your park away. And the proposal was by an ex-Yankee named Rick Cerrone to take the park for a profit-making, not free, but a profit, baseball stadium. And the city and the county had already basically, they were en route to approving it. And then I got a visit from one of the city council people, who many of you know, Donald Tucker. He came past my house one day and said, "Here," and he handed me a big thing. He said, "This is an emergency. There is an emergency meeting going to happen on Monday about this, and I want you or somebody from ICC to be in that room." So we got to that room and we got information about what they were planning to do. And, it was a horrible proposition. And in 1996, we started, as soon as the word got out, we put out flyers. We didn't have social media, remember, in those days, you didn't have all that. So you had to circulate the flyers and talk to people, and people were saying, "This is ridiculous. How can they?" Ironbound is a neighborhood of 50,000 residents, and we have two small 10-acre parks, Independence Park and Riverbank Park. So you're talking about eliminating 50% of our green space. And, we looked up, we did research like you did, Don, about what you're supposed to have for a ratio between the number of people and the amount of green space. And we were way, way, way underneath. And I see we've been joined by Lenny Thomas, who's a Spark person, and we'll ask Lenny to say something later as soon as I tell the nitty-gritty part here. So there was an immediate reaction, and people did the usual things that people do of protesting and a petition, and all of that stuff went and happened. And the answer we got from the city and the county was, "You can't win." In big letters. I always have it on a sign when I teach this to the kids, with a removable T, of course. "You can't win." And so we then knew that we had to get serious, and we had to do something more in depth. And we formed a group, an organization, a committee called SPARK, Save the Park at Riverbank. Those letters, SPARK, form SPARK. And sometimes we add Friends of Riverbank Park. We formed the organization. It was a group of people from different sectors. We had Pastor Moasir from the church. We had some of the guys from the soccer league and the baseball league who were on it with us. We had the senior citizens, and this group began to meet at the home of one of the committee members, David Schnagelberger. David was our oldest member, and he and Florence were German. And during the meetings, if we got really depressed, they played polka music to try to cheer us up and keep us going. And this fight went on for 5 years. So we had to be cheered up often because, and we had to figure out ways, I think, to keep the fight in front of the public eye. And so we had to develop strategies, and we also had backup strategies for when the first ones didn't work. And when I teach this to the kids, I talk about, when your parents don't agree with what you want right away, you got to have another strategy. So we started with a court case, and everything we did, every time we tried a new strategy, we lost. So strategy one was the court case, everybody saying what the park meant to them, why they wanted it. But guess what? The judge said they can do what they want. The judge did make one sentence, which became important later, said, they must observe all the laws. They can go ahead with their project, but they must observe all the laws in doing so. So later on, we could seize on that little sentence and use it. We had to come up with a second strategy, which was a public referendum. 4,000 names of registered voters was what we needed. And luckily, the timing was right. So many things are coincidental or accidental, or you just got to be open to what's going on. There was a presidential election year. We had people standing outside of every polling place in our neighborhood to talk about what was happening and to sign the petition to stop this takeover. And in the end, of course, there are way more voters. It was citywide, and there were way more voters in the rest of the city. And they made it so confusing in how they phrased it. There was nothing about destroying the park in there. It was all about, do you want baseball in the city of Newark? Well, of course. And Rick Cerrone, the ex-Yankee guy, was driving around in a convertible, throwing money at people and whatever he was doing to convince them to vote for baseball. But I mean, who's against baseball? Motherhood and apple pie baseball. Anyway, of course we lost, but we won in our neighborhood. We won, and it also, that sort of motivated people to eventually run somebody against the current councilman at that point, because he wasn't doing what we thought should be enough to save the park. Well, that councilman helped us sponsor a meeting eventually about the takeover of the park, and that was a series of meetings in the neighborhood, and we publicized those. And one of our members, who's still a member, Lito Miranda. Litos grew up in Hyatt Court public housing, and he worked in the old Ballantyne. I tried to convince him to come and tell his story here because it's so interesting, but he was shy. He said, if it was an in-person meeting, maybe I will come. So maybe we'll get him to tell this story. But he used to work in the Ballantyne Brewery after the brewery closed, and they had little manufacturing things there, like making umbrellas and stuff. At lunchtime, he would go to Riverbank Park and eat lunch. And he had children, and they would use the park. And so one day when he was there at lunch, he saw a camera crew, and he went over to the camera crew and said, what's going on here? The camera guy said, well, there's your mayor over there, was Sharp James. Go over and ask him what's going on. So Leto goes over, and Sharp James is there, and he's singing, take me out to the ball game, take me out with the crowd. And he said, and Leto talked to him, and he said, we're taking this park. Forget about it. Sharp said, we need the park. And he wanted Cerrone wanted the park because it was going to be free land. Obviously, it would be great for him. So Lito went back to the place of work where his colleagues were sitting around their table having lunch, and he told them what was happening. And he said, "We've got to do something." And they said, "You can't fight City Hall. Forget about it. You can't fight City Hall." Well, Lito, his heart was breaking, but a couple of weeks later, he saw one of the flyers for the very first meeting about Riverbank Park that was held in the neighborhood at one of the churches with the councilman at that time, Augusto Amador. And Lito came, and Lito is still working with our Spark committee all these years later. He now lives across from Riverbank Park with his family. And he is, well, there's a great follow-up story about Lito and where he is with all this today, but I'll save that in case we have time later. So the referendum didn't work. The third thing strategy was, okay, we'll get it designated as a historic site because it had two famous guys connected to it. The park had Frederick Law Olmsted, the guy who built Branch Brook and Central Park, the famous, world famous park designer. His firm was responsible for all the Essex County parks. Sorry, city parks, you didn't get this guy. Anyway, and the other guy involved who was very important was Murphy, last name Murphy, and I'm blanking out on his first name. Isn't that horrible?
Franklin.
Frank Murphy.
Right, Franklin Murphy, whose statue is in Weequahic Park now. We're upset about that. Franklin Murphy, what became governor of New Jersey eventually, was from the Ironbound. He owned a factory here. And I call him the dreamer because he was the person who could see things that weren't there yet. And I always tell the kids, you have that talent too, your imagination, and you can dream and think of things. And he said, I have workers and I can see we have a river through this neighborhood. It would be great, it would be wonderful if we could have a place for workers and people to go and relax during their lunch hour along the river. And he became very involved in starting the Essex County Parks Commission that was forming then, and in pushing for Riverbank Park to be one of the original parks that they would do. And it dates to 1907 when they were thinking about Riverbank Park. And so we said, let's, and a very good thing that happened was that the Landmarks Preservation Committee in Newark, which we didn't have any really connection to, but Liz Del Tufo, who's still there doing this work, Liz came to Riverbank Park, told us about the history, and she had a picture of herself taken on a bench in all her glory, sitting there in Riverbank Park. And that picture was published in a front page article of the Ledger or one of the papers, or the Ironbound Voices art paper. But it was very helpful in getting, publicity and keeping the issue in front of the people and looking at it from a different angle, the history. So NANCY ZAK, who's also still around Newark and works in historic preservation, construction issues, she wrote up the application. She researched, wrote up an application to go to Trenton to present to the History Commission. And they went down. I wasn't there, but I heard about the meeting. The commissioners were all in the room. They saw this big plan that Rick Cerrone brought it and said, oh, I'm sorry, no, this was the history one. So the commissioners voted. They all voted unanimously, make it historic. But there was a man who was supposed to sign that piece of paper, the bureaucratic, whoever he was, and he took it and he slammed it underneath all the papers on his desk and he never signed it. So it was not declared historic at that time. And so we were on to our last strategy. The winning strategy, the Superman strategy was the Green Acres program. Because Green Acres, when parks are built with Green Acres public funding, if you take away those acres, those 10 acres, you're going to have to find 10 acres somewhere nearby and replace the park. Well, and in order to do that, you have to go to the regional Green Acres office, which is controlled by the Department of the Interior. At that time, it was Bruce Babbitt, Secretary of the Interior. And so everyone from the community started writing letters to Bruce Babbitt's office. We also got people from other groups like the National Olmsted Parks Association to help us write letters. Letters were going into the Department of the Interior about how important it was to the neighborhood and the community to keep the park. And so when Rick Cerrone came to the Regional Green Acres office with this gigantic plan of replacing, they looked at him and they said, well, it looks like you might have a good plan, but it'll take us about 3 years to review. And Rick Cerrone, his face got all red. He said, no, I need shovel in the ground now and I'll find another place to build my stadium. And we had said in the beginning, is there any other place you could put it? And of course, the city and the county had all said, no, there's no other place. But they found a place, which you all know where it was, Broad Street, right? Yeah. And now that stadium is gone and it's going to become luxury housing, which we all know is going to be way too expensive probably for any people to live in. But anyway, that's how we saved Riverbank Park, because it was not taken by Rick Cerrone. He found another place and the proposal moved. And when we won that fight, one of the things we did during the fight, we had 5,000, the senior citizens helped to fold these little ribbon pins. This is a pin, and it says a green park along the river. And it's translated, like we have to do everything, into Portuguese and Spanish on the back, because we have a trilingual community here. And 5,000 of these were being worn around the neighborhood. The senior women and the senior citizens folded these for us and were part of the fight. And another thing we did, we had to find ways to keep everybody involved. In the middle of the fight, when they couldn't get rid of us, they dug in where the old Ballback Smelting Company had been way historically. And 8 feet under, they found heavy metals. So we went to our science people and they said, heavy metals aren't moving no place. So there was nothing on the surface that was contaminating, but they said, your park is contaminated and it has to be closed and remediated. Of course, they didn't fence it, so people kept going in. We cleaned it up ourselves because they stopped all maintenance. We had a Christmas tree that year in the park. And while it was supposedly closed, we had, this is in 1999 now, in the middle of the fight, when they're thinking of getting rid of us. We had the mural project where we had the high schools and all the schools create giant 8 feet high murals. This is St. Benedict's Prep, St. Casimir's Academy, all the schools, Ann Street School. These were 8-foot high wooden things. And it was wonderful that the county did help us hang them on the outside of the fence facing the street, so that people could see that the community cared about the park and still wanted it. St. Benedict's Academy had one. Hawkins Street School had one. There's Hawkins Street in color. The Hyatt Court Tenants Association, Wilson Avenue School, there's all the kids. Hyatt Court Tenants made one. Oliver Street School, all of our elementaries and the high school. And this went all around. The Ironbound Baseball League did one. That's good. I forgot. And Ironbound Community Corporation and Boys and Girls Club. South Street School had one. They were gigantic, and we couldn't, of course, we couldn't have hung them ourselves. So it was very, very good that we had help from the county. Lafayette Street School, Aspen River Park Children made one. That's an apartment complex very near to us, to the park. So to keep every age group of our community involved in different ways, seniors and young people, and keeping the story alive, and working with many partner groups throughout the whole neighborhood. And you know what helped us, of course, was that this fight was coming on top of 35 years of fighting for clean air and against pollution down here in the community that had already been going on. So some of the connections to the churches and the schools were already built through that history. And so then we could just involve them in the fight to save the park. And the other thing we were doing during the fight, all during it, was pushing to have a park along the water, so that the park acreage that Ironbound have would be increased. And this article from 1995, Ironbound Voices, and you know that you can see the Ironbound Voices now digitally. You can go to, and it's on the main library's digital, go to npl.digital.org, I think it is. And if you go to community newspapers, you can see all of the issues of Ironbound Voices. Trilingual, published from 1978 to 2001, when we gave up. We had no computers to do this with. This was a typeset thing that was laid out on a big 4x3 board and taken to Route 22 to a real printer who was printing things. And the mission statement for the Ironbound Voices said, we will publish all stories of our community where they're working together to make this a better place. And we published all kinds of things, you'll see. And that's why it was welcomed by the people. And we always felt that the Star Ledger wasn't telling enough of our story, so we would raise our voice, like it says on the murals downtown, raise your voice. So it says in here that since 1992, ICC has participated. The city had Newark City had something called the Pacific Riverfront Working Group, and ICC, namely Arnold, was sitting on that committee because we wanted it to extend all the way down in. It was supposed to stop at the Penn Station, and we wanted it to be brought into the community, into the neighborhood. And so, since it was sitting there, and what was happening was the politicians were going on the taxpayers' dime, sure enough, they were going to Baltimore and let's go see the waterfronts in Boston, you know, and then nothing would happen. They get back, and from 92 to 96, there wasn't anything happening. When this fight happened and we won the fight to save Riverbank Park, there it is, Riverbank Park alive. When we won the fight, the politicians said to us, okay, we're going to remediate and restore your old park, Riverbank, and we're going to give you the new park you've been pushing for. And we had, I couldn't find it. I was going to show you. We had something that we had developed with the community, just like we developed this community master plan at that time. We also developed a special waterfront plan, and it was beautifully done. These were professional kinds of jobs that we got people to, in some cases, to just chip in because they agreed with us. But we would always put the riverfront piece in front of the politicians whenever we would see them, and we would say, yeah, this is what we want, the old park and the new park. And they said, okay, we're going to give you the old park and we're going to give you the new park. And in 2012, we had the opening of the new park, which some of you were at. Yes, indeed. I thought I had that here to show you that, but I can't see it right now. And whose river is it? Newark returns to the river. So, you know, these are things from Friends of Riverfront Park, their first summer in 2012. And we still have Friends of Riverfront Park too. And we meet once a month on Zoom like this. And Lenny is going to talk a little about the riverfront piece of it. So I'll shut up. I just want to show you though that we had a centennial celebration in 2017 for Riverbank Park. And we are in our 20th year of running programming. We started in 2004. In 2024, we'll be on year 20 of running 2 programs in the park. And Spark is a separate 501c3 from ICC. We did that on purpose so that we could become a partner park group with Essex County and apply for their funding to get money for programming like Weequahic and Branch Brook Alliance and other parks, county park groups were doing. And we learned from them, right, Donna? We learned from our mentors that's how we could do it. And we have run a cultural arts program in the park, CAP, bringing together all our 3 language people many times so that we can learn to love each other's cultures and countries and selves. And we also ran a community learning program, which got stopped in the pandemic, but we're finding other ways, and we're going to continue to tell the history of the park. We had a great program going, which became nationally recognized for bringing our kids from the schools. We worked with the History Society, and they talked all about how the park originally got here. And then we worked with Greater Newark Conservancy, was a partner to teach what lived in the park, what grew in the park. And then Spark taught the civics part. How did the community save the park? And that program was wonderful. I've had young people in their 20s. I had one young lady come up to me and say, Oliver Street School, I know you from 5th grade when you taught that program. And she said she had gone away, she had graduated college, gone to Iowa, hated it, came back to Newark, and she said, and I want to work in the parks here. She said, Newark there's stuff happening. In Iowa, there's nothing, So it's interesting, the impact that your programs that you do in the park can have great impact on young people. And Lenny, you can talk a little are you there? Tell a little about the Riverfront Park, and how we're trying to expand it now.
Okay, good morning, all. Please excuse me for my lateness. A little personal issue there. Um, it's it's amazing. I'm sort of a newcomer in a way to the struggle with the park and the development of the park. I guess it gives you a different view of the park in a lot of ways. The One of the things that's always struck me about Riverbank and Riverfront Park too is the involvement of the community in the park. Without that, it just wouldn't have been possible. But it was on all levels because on all levels, people were involved in the park. When we were fighting to keep the park, you had, of course, older people, who were interested in keeping the park because they realized the value. But you had a letter writing campaign from kids, from the schools. They wrote about that, and all the different major groups that were in the neighborhood. They all got involved because they all were involved in the park in their own way, whether they came to play, whether somebody came to relax, whether it was somebody my age doddering in their crutches and their wheelchairs just looking for some fresh air. One of the things that is not mentioned is that Riverbank Park was one of the most utilized pieces of park land in the county. Even though it was the smallest park in the county system, they had more people come per square foot than any park in the county, which a lot of people had a hard time wrapping their heads around. One thing I found that was really unique was I used to spend a lot of time in the playground because Spark had a lot of programs that were targeted for children. We had other things for adults too. We didn't get people look like me, but we had a lot of programs that were aimed at children. And so I would go there and pass our flyers, announce different activities were coming. But it struck me that even though we had people that spoke different languages because they had come at different times, they all got along well together. I remember watching somebody come back with a bicycle. Now, they weren't supposed to have a bicycle inside the park playground. And this guy was ripping back and forth the whole time I was there in his bicycle. And I was like, wow. But he would go outside and then he'd come back in, go outside and come back. I didn't realize why he was doing that until it was about 12 o'clock. And a mother told another child it's time to go home. And the child went to get the bicycle from the guy who was riding the bicycle. It wasn't his bicycle. The other boy had come there on the bike to play. He didn't want to play on the bicycle. The mother said, bring it. And this other guy who was there didn't have a bicycle. So he borrowed the bicycle and used it the whole time they were in the park. When it came time to go home, he gave the bike back to him, thanked him for letting him use the park. And that's where a lot of things go. I mean, even when they didn't understand the language, they understood the language of using the park and playing in the park. I see some of the same things going on now. You don't have one type of person using the park. There's not a park person per se. You have people from business coming to relax. You have young people coming because they want to be alone. And you have young people coming to get that energy out. You have people like nature and they like to be by the river. You have people that like to be in the shade. You have all sorts of different people coming there for different things, but the same thing. They enjoy the park. And as park people, you know that. You know how important parks are to people. And it's not like one person. It's a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. When the people I talk to, they come from all sorts of different places, when they come to park events or just come to visit. You have people who are going to school here in Newark. You have people coming from New York who might come over for events. You have people who are just attracted to green space because the artificial things we put up to pretend to be green are not like having a living park, living green space, trees, have that open air, even though we have to fight to get what little air we have here. But they come out for that and they enjoy it. They really enjoy being there. It seems like they're transformed when they come to the park because they can just sit there and relax. You actually can see a physical change in people as they come into the park. If you stand at one of the entrances there, they seem to come tense. And once they're there for a while, they can sit down and relax, or they can walk or even run. They leave different people. And I guess that's one thing we all understand as people who are vested in park and green spaces. We know that importance of having that space that people can relate to and relax with. The right now it has the same type of atmosphere that's growing the new park events. Even though they may be different, even though we have different things at different times, it all seems to touch something in the people from the neighborhood and outside of the direct neighborhood. People come there just to be with nature, enjoy and feed that part of themselves that just makes life a lot better for them. So I'm just going to add that part and sort of let it go there. I usually end all the time I do in talking about the park, whether it be Riverbank or Riverfront or any other parks. I tell people they're nice. Come visit. One thing you probably found, and I find too, that people that have not been to the park don't know what to expect. And they act like, well, I'll give you a quote. I had a group coming in, they were going to help do some spruce up work in the park. And the lady asked me if we should bring a guard. I said, a guard? What for? She said, well, I heard this. I said, no, it's all right. I'll make sure it's in. And they're just shocked when they come there. And then they come back. I've actually met former students of mine coming back with their children, which is a little hard to take. But they come back with their children, and it's like they just discovered the park. And that part bothers me because they live a few blocks away, but it's just they had not opened themselves to the fact that they have a park because other people have fought to get and keep the green space that we have. And so that's why I guess I always feel it's so important to talk about it to people that I meet. Now, have you been down here? You should check it out. People go, he's a little crazy, but maybe one time I'll go down and shut him up, just go down and see what he's talking about. And then they come back and tell me, wow, I didn't know. And in a way you find that there has been that undercurrent of people who try to say negative things about our park system. But when they come down and see it firsthand, they're hooked. They're coming back. So I'm going to stop, talking there. I could talk about the meetings that we've had to talk about what we want in the park, which is really very important. I guess there are still those who feel that it happens by magic. That's not the way. You have to put that work in. You have to talk to people, find out what people are looking for, making sure that everything that's there stays the way it should be. But there's still that group of people who feel that happens by magic, that you just wish it and boom, it's there. It's not like that. Whether you're talking about people who forget that they have to take the litter out, or whether you're talking about the lanternfly infestations or certain other things, that there are things you have to do to keep that green space up so that we will have it not only for ourselves, but for the future generations of people who come to the park. So with that, I'm going to close my mouth. Unless you have any questions, because I those of you who know me know I can talk a little bit, just a little bit. But
Well,
if you have
I
any
think
questions.
we should just mention that we're still trying to get the park extended, and we're trying to get the rowing club.
Oh well,
Uh,
that I'm sorry. I guess I guess you sort of assume that everybody in the park knows everything that goes there. Um, the new part of the parks, the city park system, is still under its growing and developing stage. There are still, as before, groups that are impacting that. We have now one of the more active groups right now is our rowing group, and their group of young people who row on the river. As the river is cleaned up, it's becoming more and more important, because this is what we look forward to go back to the type of activities we had in the river before. Unfortunately, it will not take place in our lifetime, but we're looking for our grandchildren and our grand generations that are coming up. And so we have people like the rowing club that are looking to get more people involved in the rowing, and we have other people who are, whether they're doing music or other groups like that. We have our runners clubs, we have our yoga that's there. We have people come there with food to share in the park, and so many other things. It's very important, though, that we get people coming out to the meetings so they can give their input, because in all my time working with parks, whether it be local or national park systems, one of the things that is always stressed, you can have the best park in the world, but unless the park is meeting the desires, wants, and needs of the local community, it's nothing. And I've seen some parks that on paper look great, and they say nobody goes there. Nobody goes there. And that's why I think the work that we do is important, because we're keeping that connection with the community. What do you want? What's going good? What's going wrong? All those things are important in the mix, so that the parks continue to thrive and grow. So we have these groups now that are coming through, and we have volunteer groups that come on a yearly basis from the colleges and the campuses, and we have other community groups that get involved the same way. But I try to stress to people, come out to the development meetings and tell them what you want. Don't wait until it's built. They say, oh, I didn't want that. Come out before it's built and give your opinions. Tell your wants, tell your desires. That's the time that's very important, because you're determining what's going to happen for everybody coming up. And you know what people are looking for better, than anyone else. So it's really important to do that and stay involved as all of you are. So I guess I'll pull back then a little bit. If you have any questions or anything else I can answer.
yeah, I guess you want people to ask whatever questions they have, if there are questions about anything. This is the beautiful Riverfront Park guide that was done by Damon Rich, and
Yes.
this we use with all the schools because it has the history of the river, and it also has a wonderful map of Newark and its relation to the river inside. So I think everybody should have these and use them when talking to people. And of course, this is this year's calendar of all the events going on. 2023. Riverfront Park has all this stuff going on, so. And she has there's a website, Newark City.
Parks Foundation.
.org, yeah. And
Right.
you can get everything that's happening. Yep.
Was that a question?
No, I'm
Susan?
sorry.
No,
So we do
I
want to
just
open it
wanted
up
to
for,
applaud. Yeah, I just wanted to applaud you, Nancy, for, I mean, just, that's why I came, because every time I see your name, I get excited. I'm like, I gotta go listen to Nancy, because it's so wonderful listening to the work that you've done. And as a grassroots activist myself here and also in Latin America, and so the way you do it reminds me so much of how they do it in Latin America in terms of, the community getting in there, getting your hands dirty, becoming, emotionally involved and physically. And so what I wanted to know is, mostly it's for whoever's watching or may watch this and in the future, is that lots of times people don't realize the amount of time and money that it takes to do this. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit, how did you manage, in terms of, your wife, mother, you have your career and then doing all of this and also the funding, how did you do it?
Well, the funding piece is through the Essex County partnership that we have. And I have in laying here somewhere in my house, the resolution they passed, and I'm gonna get it hung in the field house that says that we're a partner group with Essex County. And so we apply, and I've been handling the applications myself, but we have officers from our committee. We have a president and a treasurer. We have an accountant who reviews everything, because I do not want to have any problems financially. So, and we also did a major fundraiser every year called, when we did music and art in the park, we have these little booklets going back. This is 2007, but we have all the way back to 2004, I think. And this was our local businesses supporting. We had people go around and request support from all the businesses. And that raised a significant amount of money to match the grant money. We needed to have matching money for the grants. So that's very good. Market Auto Body Works. We stopped that when the pandemic hit, because for a year or two, we didn't have music or art day. We're back, and we're going to have the 20th anniversary year next year, and this is going to be back. The booklet is going to be back, I hope. It's a lot of work, because these volunteers, committee members, went around to the businesses and explained what we're doing, and do you want to support the young people in the schools? And usually everybody, it's the kind of thing that people find it hard to say no, when they're talking about students from the neighborhood, and that's also the people that are going to your businesses, so you want to do something. You use any personal connections you have in fundraising. And as far as balancing my life, I have to say that you have to have your support groups, right? So my immediate support group is my family of Arnold, my husband, and Beth, my daughter, who went to Science High School and now works at the main library in the Charles Cummings room. Anybody who needs research, you can go get help from one of the best. And she helps a lot with the ongoing work. She helps me with some of the forms on my computer that I can't figure out when I have to turn in reports on fiscal stuff. She helps with making flyers for us, for all of our events, and she's got a good eye for that kind of stuff. And I could not do this without my husband and my daughter and my people on my committee, because Lido is there right across from the park. And I can say, Lido, can you go over there and see, are they there? Did they come? You know, everybody, Lenny's there with his pole when there's movie nights, putting up a garbage bag to cover the light that's too close to where the screen's gonna be, so we can have a beautiful screen for our movie this year. And yeah, there's many people that are involved in helping spread the word, of course.
Yeah, and I love those cultural events. I love going to them. I see you, the groups. Yeah, just wonderful. Thank you. Great job too, Lenny.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being interested.
I have a question, if that's okay, Carla. It's Susan Haig here from South Orange and Civic Story, and Nancy and Lenny, thank you so much for telling this story. It's really, really compelling. And I'm just wondering if you can please provide just the date so I can get the timeline, that beautiful timeline of social change. If you could just let me note down the date of the court case. You outlined the steps so beautifully. You know, step 1, court case, lost. Can you remind me what year that was?
Well, that would have been early on. I guess it would be, I'll have to double check, Susan. There've been a lot of court cases on a lot of different things. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing though.
Okay. Is it around
90s,
in the 90s? In the 90s.
Yeah.
And then the second one, it's just such a great lesson in civics. You've just laid out this how you make change on the local level. So the public referendum.
Yeah, we can get you data.
Do you remember what year that was?
I'll get you the date on that too.
Okay. And then this third thing, if I'm correct, I want to make sure I get this right. The third strategy was you found somebody to run for council who was supportive of the park, right?
Oh, the third strategy was the historic designation attempt.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the historic designation, and there was a vote on that. Yeah.
We lost. And
right. Do you remember when that was?
Again, I'll get you all the dates so I don't tell you the wrong thing.
But just so was it approximately 2005 or 4?
No, it all happened between 96 and 2001. 5 years.
Okay.
That period.
Thank you. And then the
Reopened
Green Acres.
in 2001.
So the Green Acres was 2001 as well.
Well,
and then
I'll double check.
Yeah, and then you said there's a civics. The curriculum is really kicking in with civics from 2 years ago. The state passed the law.
Yes,
how the community saved the park. Is that a little civics curriculum you have in Newark? Because it's a beautiful, powerful story.
Yes, I know. And we're going to be trying to get into the schools and tell the story more. That's the story we told when the students came to the park.
Excellent. Beautiful.
I got invited to Eastside High School's Earth Day, and I had a table for Spark, and I made some good connections with their teaching staff. So I'm hoping we'll be able to tell the story. That's one of our one of our grant requirements is to keep telling the story. And so we're going to be finding ways we can do that.
And others can, and it's an exemplary story that others can tell as well, because it's so clear. The steps are so clear. And then I'm wondering, is Marcy DePina still doing programming at
Yes, she is. And she still convenes the Riverfront Friends meetings, which are monthly on third Thursday of the night. Yes, Marcy's still here.
Great. Well, thank you. And congratulations on a multi-decade journey and commitment and energy and imagination for change.
And I hope we can call on you all if we need to get pressure on this with this boat dock problem and issue. Craig White is the person from the Brick City Rowers Club that has to row in Nutley because they don't have a place in Newark. And he is a real go-getter, and you're going to hear more from Craig, I'm sure. There's a wonderful book out about the rowing, and I'll try to find those things for you so you can. When they had their gala in Newark, they brought in minority rowers from across the United States, a couple of women from California who were way older than us, Donna, and they came to be with these young rowers and to, tell their stories. And they had a huge event, which unfortunately our political guys didn't, were not there. And that was my failure, really. I should have made sure that they saw that, because it was so impressive. So we're going to try to get that to happen. And yeah. We'll be in touch.
Hey, thank
And
you.
I am so glad that there's a City Parks, this group, because just the way it, from what we've seen at Riverfront Park with the city and the county and the lack of communication many times, it's so important to have groups working together and knowing what's going on and supporting each other. Yes, I am, and I love your mission statement and all of that. It's everything that we believed about why we needed to save Riverbank Park is right there. And so you might get some new members coming your way, but
We hope so. We hope so. This was so great, Nancy and Lenny. What it goes to show that, when you plant seeds,
they
you,
grow.
Mr. McNeil, there's some soldiers that was there, all together. And the two that come to the top is you and Wilbur McNeil. And so jointly planting seeds for us
Yeah.
that came behind to continue, what you started. And so, I'm proud to say, I know that I'm a part of the fruit of your labor, by continuing to do what was showed how to do. And I got to bring in Mildred Helms Park Resurrection Committee, because Deacon Crawford and Fannie Harris was speaking to you guys long before Trust for Public Land came, and really was intricate for us learning from you. And those two county parks that was already there, that knew it was so important about the city parks being as strong. So
That's great.
thank you for all that you've done, being a part of the foundation of what we are, and where we inspire to be. So anybody else have any questions or any comments for Lenny and Nancy?
Together we can move mountains. Alone we can't move at all.
Yep.
We need a t-shirt.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
a green one, I guess. Thank you for the opportunity
Thank
to
you
tell
for sharing.
that story.
I just think it's encouraging that you were able to do what you did in that period of 5 years, especially, and that you're still around and are continuing some of the programs. So I think that gives us some hope and encouragement as we face other issues related to parks or to the zoning issue that's going on now. It's the kind of thing that keeps us wanting to move forward.
And I thought the high school students really benefited because they got a positive story. And there's so much talk now about mental depression, and because there's so much to feel depressed about, as we all know. So it was good to have, it's good to have a story where David beats Goliath, and the outcome is good for people, and people can do things together. I mean, it really is important, I think.
I might just jump in with that. Just one more thing. I guess with Spark, again, one of our big focuses was with young people, and I've seen young people that started out in almost toddlers, like in third grade, actually volunteering, helping us with events, doing minor things, but more and more as they got older. And now I see them coming back with their children, which is a little scary. But it carries on that legacy, if you will, when you get young people involved, because if they value what's there, which they do, then they come back and continue to come back with their children, their friends, their connections, the people they meet, the newcomers to the neighborhood, and so forth. And I think that's a really important piece to really include and continue, because we need to have the young people there. We're going to be here for a minute, and then we're going to leave. And we've lost a few people that we really miss, but there have been other people have come along, and they're not the same, but it works the same way. They're invested in what's going on, and they help to continue that legacy of the park, and because they see the same values that other people have seen. It's a place to come and recreate. You meet other people. There's things you learn in the park, actually. There's a lot of things you can do. Some of the things remind you of places you've been before, and other people are just here. So I think that part is just really important to stress and continue.
And the effect on the young people. I had the woman downtown, another woman who, Nancy, I remember you from Music and Art Day 9 years ago. Her mother was with her, and they remembered. So the events and the things that happen really create an impact on the young people.
Okay, I thank you. Any more questions? Thank you. I will stop the recording.